All right, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be pretty much doing a recap of the live stream we had yesterday. If you want to watch the full thing, go ahead and go back and check out the live stream. We're pretty much going to be talking about a lot of the indicators that I'm seeing or not seeing that are pretty much showing that the Pokemon market really isn't slowing down. And I'm looking at it from a macroeconomic scale. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. And so, first, we got to start off with our black and white release day. So you can see some friendly folks here. Obviously, I am not a fan of this. It's absolutely disgusting. But part of the reason why I'm showing this, and I didn't show these in the live stream yesterday, but really I'm trying to illustrate is that clearly scalping is still at an all-time high. People are still finding ways to profit off of these products. While I'm not a fan of that, I do think that it does speak to the larger, broader Pokemon market, which is that if there was not opportunity or um, if there was not financial opportunity here, then these people would not be doing this. But I just want to get that out of the way. It's kind of a low hanging fruit point, but the again, we talked about this in the live stream, but one of the main macroeconomic indicators that I'm seeing, and again, I am not a financial advisor. This is just a 25-year-old giving you their take on the current market. And obviously, on a broader scale, there's not always a one-to-one between the economic market, the global economic market, and the Pokemon card market. But I just want to show you some interesting indicators, which one that we talked about yesterday was the S&P index, which is the 500 most valuable companies in the United States, has recently reached an all-time high of $6,300, which is very impressive. It's continued to go up and up and up, breaking new all-time highs. Part of the reason for that, which I wanted to talk about was, and we talked about this yesterday again, was the new most valuable company in the entire world is Nvidia. This is a company that produces GPUs or AI chips, and so there's a lot of movement for AI recently. Again, this has no correlation to Pokemon, but what I'm trying to say is that the most valuable companies are continuing to become more and more valuable in a lot of cases. With the stock market, there's still some normal pullbacks here and there, especially on some of the other companies that are not choosing to adopt AI. You have ones like Apple and others that are lagging behind, but I'm just trying to show you on a broader scale that a lot of these companies are still doing very, very well, and many are breaking new all-time highs. In addition to that, we also have crypto, which I know a lot of people are not involved with. I do not own any Bitcoin, for example, but Bitcoin recently crossed over 123,000. It's down back to 117,000. It's still very much higher than it was 6 months ago, but it crossed a historic new all-time high, and I do think a lot of people who have access to crypto or who have held Bitcoin for any amount of time are probably cashing in, and in some cases that trickles back into Pokemon and other card games. I know I've seen Rudy from Alpha Investments talk about how a lot of his high-end buyers, people buying these XY boxes and cases, are paying in crypto oftentimes. So that's just something, another bullet point or another thing that you can keep in mind. Again, this is just merely how I'm seeing things. This is not a comprehensive review or the exact reason why the Pokemon card market is doing well. I'm just trying to say that in the stock market right now, things are going very well. And so anyone who's cashing out or has had a lot of money in the stock market could be pulling some out and putting it into Pokemon. I'm not saying they are, but I'm just trying to say across the board, people are doing very, very well. Again, if people don't have their money invested into assets like the stock market or other assets, then they might not be seeing these gains. I know there's still a lot of struggle across the country and some political things, which we're not going to get too in depth with, but I'll go over in just a second. But I just wanted to say, we have a lot of younger folks, including myself in the hobby, who might not be invested in traditional financial markets. And so, besides like 401ks or Roth IRAs, and so it's just interesting to see these other data points and try to understand what's going on a macro level and to see if we can see any adjustments or relationships between the macro and Pokemon. So, on the contrary or the contrast to that, I did want to point out something we talked about yesterday, which is that historically in the last 10 years, July, which is the month we're in now, it's July 19th, has almost always been one of the strongest months in the stock market. So, this chart is showing the percentage growth or loss of the S&P index, which we just talked about, over the last 10 years. So any of these squares or cells that are blue are positive percent growth, whereas the yellows are negative. And so historically, what they're cautioning about in this article or this tweet is that we may see some price movement in the traditional stock market drop off a bit in August and September. Those we've typically seen some red candles, red months in some of those previous years. And so again, that's not saying Pokemon is going to slow down in that way. I'm just trying to make you guys aware that we've been going up and up and up for so long. There is definitely some downside and or high risk at this point because of how expensive things have gotten. In addition to that, again, I'm not going to get political here, but Trump is obviously going back and forth with a lot of this tariff stuff. And so if he can't come to certain agreements, I believe, with certain countries and groups, then they're going to have those tariffs take into effect. Again, that might not actually affect the supply chain of Pokemon. I know there are some with Japan, I believe, but at a broader scale, if there is like a lot of market volatility that comes from this, you could see this trickle back into collectibles and such. Again, historically, it's not an exact 1-to-1 ratio of if the traditional stock market does poorly, Pokemon does poorly, or vice versa. But I'm just trying to point out some of these indicators because I don't see too many people on Pokemon investing YouTube or Pokemon finance YouTube that talk about these things. I'm just now getting involved with them for fun on the side as well. And so I did think it was interesting to be able to try to bring up some of these points for those that aren't normally exposed to them. One other indicator is CNN actually has what's called a fear and greed index, which takes in a number of factors involving the stock market. It essentially says that it's a gauge that excessive fear tends to drive prices down, and too much greed tends to have the opposite effect. It's a combination of a variety of aspects and factors that help determine market behavior. And right now you can see that as of July 19th, 2025, we are in the extreme greed. And so 1 month ago we were neutral, but recently with all this stock movement continuing to push up in a lot of cases, a lot of all-time highs, a lot of new startup companies that no one knows about, small cap companies that are getting absolutely juiced up as opposed to some of the more traditional or safer quote unquote investments. So a lot of people are being a bit riskier, and usually a lot of greed correlates to things like FOMO, which I know everyone in the Pokemon hobby is very familiar with, and a lot of this speculative buying and reduced management of risk. And so we're definitely seeing that in the Pokemon card market as well. So I did want to bring this up to say that, again, there are some similarities between the traditional stock market and Pokemon. I still am very pro Pokemon, bullish Pokemon in the near to long term. And we're going to go into some of those other reasons right now. So another thing we discussed in the live is just the amount of partnerships that Pokemon has been making recently. It's absolutely insane. One of the biggest ones they made recently was this MLB, so Major League Baseball in the United States. They now have a partnership with Pokemon Go for the 2025 season. All MLB ballparks will feature new official club branded Pokestops in gyms so trainers can play Pokemon Go wherever they're sitting at the park. So there's new merch, in-game avatars, all this stuff. Again, the actual specifics of it I don't really care about as much as just the fact that Pokemon as an IP and as a brand is continuing to push the boundary as much as they can. You have this was actually the first NBA game that I personally have ever been to in Seattle. Pokemon sponsored an NBA preseason game with the Trailblazers and the Clippers. It was called the Rain City Showcase. There was actually an exclusive promo that came from it. It was just the Paldea Evolved Common Pikachu, but it had a Rain City Showcase stamp that you can see right here. I actually had 2 of these cards and graded them in PSA 10, which they're pretty low pop. And you'll actually see right here, 2 of these sales were actually mine. I believe the 475 and the 400 one. So again, broad scale, what I'm trying to illustrate is that Pokemon is continuing to license its IP out, get its name more widespread. You have Pokemon Pocket, which is generating them hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue since its release. And I just wanted to show again another one that we talked about was also we have the One Piece promo with the LA Dodgers. So they had this one which is pretty expensive. I think it's a several $100s and several $1,000s in a PSA 10. They also did one with Borussia Dortmund. Again, I know this is a Pokemon video, but what I'm trying to illustrate is that a lot of these card games, a lot of these huge names and IPs are continuing to license themselves out. Another example was Pokemon partnering with a gaming company, Razer, which is pretty popular. They're doing mouse and keyboards, that sort of stuff. Not super insane by any means, just trying to show more of the collaborations they're doing. One that's really big that they actually announced was their collaboration with Lego. So coming 2026, there is going to be Pokemon themed Legos coming out, which is going to be huge. That will obviously be a big boost for the brand and for Lego. I know that I will definitely be purchasing those and building them with my girlfriend. Some other ones that we brought up were obviously they're continuing to do McDonald's promotions, and we have one in Japan coming out soon, a Pokemon Japan McDonald's exclusive promotion with a few of these different Pokemon on them. So, and then another one I pulled up was Pokemon Crocs. So, all of this is just to say Pokemon is continuing to push the boundaries in many cases. We have a lot of cards that are continuing to reach all time highs. Again, I think that does correlate a bit to this extreme greed, the fear and greed index that we talked about. I do think that some people are getting a little bit too confident in terms of pushing the prices so much higher or believing that there's still room to grow. Granted, I do think there is room to grow in a lot of these purchases that people are making. It's just in the near term, can they continue to push that much higher? It's pretty impressive that the bull market has lasted almost a year now, and there are people, even including Rudy, who think that this will continue to go on for a bit longer, which I probably agree with. But I just want to show you guys at a macro scale why some factors why Pokemon is actually taking advantage of all the growth that it's been seeing. It's not just scalpers buying out the products and stores shelves not having them. There is a reason why they are doing that. It's because there's so much demand in the hobby right now that the value, or rather there's just not enough product to go around for the amount of people that want it. You see that with people at distribution, stores at distribution who can't order any more product right now, or when they do, it just sells out almost immediately. There's tiny slivers of the pie being handed out to car dealerships and random stores that normally would not be opening or ordering Pokemon. And then, yeah, we obviously have like the Rip and Ships as well. The Rip and Ships have been doing a lot of damage to the sealed supply for sure. And the replacement coming back from the Pokemon Company is just not fast enough to keep up with the burn rate, I believe, of product right now in the Scarlet Violet era at least. Sword and Shield has been out of print, and so what's out there is out there. It is everything is getting very, very expensive. I know everyone's aware of that. I'm not trying to say that things are great for kids or for people that just want to buy a few packs to enjoy. All I'm trying to do is point to some outside factors that could be potential reasons why the Pokemon market is maybe getting a bit of a boost as well. Not saying it is the sole reason, and I'm not saying that there's no correlation, not saying that there's no influence or relationship there as well. So yeah, those were the main things we talked about in the stream yesterday. Again, if you were interested, go ahead and check it out. We're going to be live streaming with a guest next Tuesday, and then we'll do another solo stream on Thursday. I would really appreciate it if you guys could join. As always, thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe down below, and I will see you all in a new one soon. Peace.